Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the May 12th Sustainability Working Group meeting. I'd like to start off with a territorial acknowledgement. Leslie, can you read that for us?
We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should only take what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you, Leslie. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. Review of the previous meeting minutes. Are there any issues with the minutes from the previous meeting? Okay, seeing none, can I have someone move that? Moved by Leslie, second by Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That's carried. All right, so on to business on the agenda. The first one, we do have the standing agenda item of the Transform 80 by 50 list. I have no update from that. Are there any questions before we move on? All right, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which I believe is, sorry, I just lost it on my screen here. It's the Earth Day debrief. So there was multiple items that went on. We had the rain barrel sale, the Earth Day cleanup, and the community engagement via our social media channels. I'm not sure if anyone here on the committee attended the rain barrel event. Was anyone there? I know Dean was, but Councillor Fenning. How did it go? Everything went okay?
Yeah, it was, there were a bunch of people that came by hoping to buy a rain barrel on site, so we probably could have sold more. I had said, oh, you know, the region's doing one, then looked it up, and the region's supply of rain barrels was also sold out. So apparently there's very good demand, and that's something we could look at doing again. But yeah, it was a really positive event. Everybody was really happy. I delivered a couple rain barrels with my car, and Jordan also delivered rain barrels to people who had asked for it to be delivered. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was great, and a lot of smiling faces and happy people.
Excellent, good to hear. So hopefully, you know, that kind of keeps its steam into next year as well. Okay, and the other one we had was the Earth Day cleanup, the various parks and trails throughout the township. I know we had that. It was a co-coordinated event between the Sustainability Working Group and the Trails Committee, and I believe yourself, Councillor Fenning, you were on site as well. So how was that? It was the first year, I guess, that's kicking this off. So you have an update on that as well? Yeah.
So good news. The parks and trails areas are not quite as messy as we might have anticipated. So it didn't take the full amount of time. So going forward, probably can allocate a little less time. Very interesting things we found. But yeah, it was pretty positive. The weather wasn't terribly great, but the people that came out were really, really keen, and definitely look forward to doing it again next year.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Fenning. Toby, you have your hand up.
Just wondering, I don't know what the process behind the rain barrels and the rain barrel sales are, but if there's such high demand, is there a way that we can, a couple of times a year, midsummer, or have a supply? I don't know if there's a way we can help to support that, but what a great way to sort of save on our water demand, save rainwater. Is there any way that that can be done, whether it's in collaboration with other townships, with the region? Have we thought about that at all?
It's a good question. I think this specific event was held by the Eco Boosters and Morningside. I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact name of the community group. But but and that was coordinated with rainbarrel.ca. So it wasn't specifically through the region, but I believe there was some form of interaction with them as well. So I believe a program like that isn't limited to just Earth Day. And I guess if the community group wants to proceed and maybe do a multiple event, I am sure, in conjunction with the region and township staff, we would be, open to having multiple events. But Councillor Penning, go ahead.
I think so. The rain barrels through rainbarrel.ca. There are a couple interesting things about them. One is that some of the ones they offer are straight up repurposed, so they're not even recycled plastic. It's actually just a barrel that was used for a food product and is now minor modifications, now is a rain barrel. So it's a really good waste diversion stream as well. And I think they are available all the time. If we talk to Dean Peachy, since he's on this committee as well, and he was sort of spearheading that, even if I would imagine we could do a second event. And you can order from that website pretty much any time, is my understanding. It doesn't have to be through any particular organization. So I don't know, maybe at our next meeting, we could talk about either doing another event, whether we coordinate through Dean and that group, or do it ourselves, or even just sharing out the information via our social media and other communication methods that people can one if they miss the event.
Thanks, Leslie.
Yeah, so there are, I guess if we want to do one that's related to the Sustainability Committee or Wilmot, that's great. But there are a lot in the area. So like currently, if you go on their website, you can actually filter down by province and township or city. So Kitchener, Littlefoot Community Projects has one going on for June 6th. McEachern Public School has one it's going to actually close on Saturday. And then Accessibility also has one in Kitchener. And then I haven't looked at, Waterloo, but they are available to be able to be pre-ordered. And I think that the issue is that you do have to pre-order with rainbarrel.ca, right? Because I think at least then they have the ones that they need, so they don't end up driving them all and having to drive them all back, I would just say, if we can, like maybe tell people that there are other ones within the community or surrounding areas. We can.
Thanks, Leslie. Okay, so perhaps, we can, that's a good point as well. And we can perhaps chat with Dean. Unfortunately, he's not here today. I'm not sure why, but we can certainly follow up with him to see if there's any future events planned by him and his group. All right, and sorry, so back on Earth Day. So we had the community cleanup, as well. Staff had a cleanup around the administration complex on Earth Day. There's a good turnout, and I think there was 6 or 7 bags around the administration complex grounds, surprisingly so. That was a good turnout. And community engagement, so a little social media campaign the week leading up to Earth Day. Seems like there was some good activity when I saw it myself on the social media channels. So it was good to kind of get that communication out there to the community. Anything else to add to Earth Day before we move on? The only thing I would say is perhaps lean to the community cleanup. If we look towards it next year again, which I'm assuming we will, hopefully, as the years progress, we'll start to see more engagement and like Councillor Fanning said, perhaps targeting more areas. Like you said, if it was clean already, or more or less cleaner, we'll just need to identify parks beforehand if we know problem areas, let's call it. So that'll be more engagement, let's say, instead of everyone just showing up at 9 and there's nothing really much to do. Leslie, go ahead.
I was thinking that, not so much to do, but there is an opportunity there, not for cleanup, but maybe for inventory, to sort of see like what plants and trees are available, like that are on the sides of the trail, as a way to sort of garner interest in what people might see on the trail, or even as an inventory piece. I think we talked about this before for trees within Wilmot and creating an inventory. So there could be a possibility of doing that, which is also very important from, natural asset, perspective. So, yeah.
Great point, Leslie. Councillor Fenning? Oh, you muted.
Sorry. The phrase of the last 2 years, you're muted. Love what Leslie's saying. We've actually talked about that at Trails meetings, that we want to identify all of the different native species, and of course also identify invasive species that we would like to get rid of on all of the trails and properties that we have in the township. Some of that might be less possible to do at Earth Day, so maybe we could look at doing a couple events like that through the year, because they'll be visible at different times, and there are some really good kind of citizen naturalist programs that we could connect into for that.
Tova?
It's an interesting idea if you've got people out in the community looking at environment stuff, doing inventories, doing cleanups, to like provide little saplings to and send them to areas where it needs a bit of reforestation, and to have some planting done at the same time. It's kind of like a regeneration. If we put all these pieces together, it actually becomes quite a dynamic event. Someone wants to tidy, someone wants to plant, someone wants to inventory. Kind of a cool community thing. Could even tie it into schools, seeing if there are classes that want to come and do it, part of the curriculum. Just a thought.
It's a great thought. I think we've got a good idea rolling here. Councillor Fenning?
I don't know why I cannot seem to hit that unmute today. Let's Tree Wilmot has gotten a bunch of the schools coming out, and we had another event on this past Saturday. And I think there's pretty much a tree planting event almost every week with them in the township. So it's pretty amazing. And they're rolling it out now to private property projects as well. And well, you'll get to see one tomorrow, Tova.
Okay, so perhaps before we move on, then for Earth Day for next year, and then also in between, if we're talking a little bit about interim, as far as inventorying and stuff goes, is there any direction at this point in time the committee wants to proceed with? Leslie?
I would say if we can maybe put it in our calendars to start looking at Earth Day, I guess maybe in December, maybe, or January. We did kind of talk about it, and then it kind of rolled off our radar, just so that we can really kind of plan it a little bit, because I think, we kind of did a last minute push, but maybe plan it just a little bit sooner. So we'll put it in our agenda maybe to do it for December.
Good. Tova?
And I think that's actually really smart, Leslie, to start it early. But also, if we want to do it, I always like doing everything in collaboration. So like the township doesn't have to do the planting. Let's Tree Wilmot to do the planting. We want to get to bring all the partners together, and that just takes a little bit of extra time. So I just wanted to echo that and say I think it's a great idea to bring in all those partners.
Excellent. All right. So if there's nothing else, we'll move on to the the next agenda item, which was the waste pickup. Also, I believe for you, Tova, you weren't here at the last meeting, but in the minutes, I'll give a quick rundown, and for you, Councillor Penning, as well. There's the idea posed by Dean, our committee member, to, he alluded in Winnipeg had a day, once or twice a year, where community members would put out garbage at the end of their driveway on Saturday. And it would be kind of a free for the taking event where, if you would drive by and pick it up, and, kind of a giveaway weekend. And if no one took it, you'd take it back in and then dispose of it at a later time. We at the last meeting, we were to kind of follow up with the region to see how, an event like this could work with Wilmot, since, waste is under their purview. So Brian Bishop did reach out to the region. And Brian, did you want to give a quick rundown on the outcome of that conversation? Oh, you're very quiet, Brian. Still can't hear you. Sorry.
That better?
No.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay. I was talking to Dave at the region, and the region's fully on board on getting to doing this pilot project. They've done this on other communities, so they just want to make sure that the messaging is clear with the residents on size of items. There's a bylaw in place that you can't put items out until your garbage day, so they just want to remind people of that. They want to make sure it's free. There's just a few messaging items that they like to get talked about. So, but they're willing to partner with us and then take this initiative on. So they put it on their website and do some advertising as well, and I'm assuming we would do the same thing. So yeah, they're quite excited about it.
Yeah, and they made the point as well, as far as it's something they endorse, because it promotes waste diversion, especially for large items.
Yeah.
So, and I know we discussed at the last meeting perhaps setting up a little bit of a, let's call it a subcommittee, with the sorry, a leader. I can't think of the word off the top of my head. That will undertake and look in further how we can kind of engage the community and kind of develop a program as far as how do we market it, who do we engage, like Let's Tree Wilmot, the eco boosters, to kind of get that rolling, because it's a bit of a challenge to get the word out there. So if we get the right people in the right seats, we can definitely engage and appropriately communicate that for the community, and also choose the correct date as well. Are we looking right after spring cleaning or in the fall? So I think that's a good project for us to work on. And I know Dean was very keen on that, but we can certainly chat about it more today, or if we can wait for Dean. But Leslie, you have your hand up. I'll stop talking.
I was going to say that Dean did say that he would, he's not here, but he did say that he would champion it, but not for this year. The other thing that we need to also look into is neighborhood associations. I'm on a couple, because my neighborhood doesn't actually have a neighborhood association. We're like bookended by two really great ones. And so they have been talking a lot about their like garage sale weekends that they're going to be having soon. And so like if we can identify some of those, I do not live in Wilmot, so I don't know who those might be. So if we can identify those, to like maybe reach out to them to get it on their radar as well. And then just for the minutes, Brian, you said Dave at the region. Who's Dave at the region? Can you just give me his last name? Is that okay?
Yes, Dave Johnson. I'll have to just double check that, but
Okay.
I can let you know.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Councillor Penning?
So I was remiss when you said about the community associations. I was remiss in not mentioning that the Baden Community Association actually ran a really fantastic event for Earth Day as well, cleaning up, and they have been doing that since a lot longer. It's not a new event for them, so they would be one of the associations to reach out to on this. I'm thinking also like all the service clubs, the Optimists, Rotary, etc., Lions. Oops, if I forget one of them, I'm gonna get in trouble. but I'm not sure I can remember exactly all of them. But anyways, all of the service clubs, and forgive me if I've forgotten somebody.
It's okay. You can just let me know and I'll put it in the minutes. So that's that way we won't forget them when we actually go to do this. So thank you.
So as for today's action items then, so we won't set up the committee just because Dean was the one that was working on it. So is it okay if we postpone, kind of organizing that into the following meeting, or go ahead, Councilor Fanning?
Sorry, I just have there have been some conversations about committees and structures and how we have to structure if we form a subcommittee, because we're a committee of council. There can be rules around that, and I don't know them all. So if we're going to call it a committee, we need to figure out what the proper process is. Whereas I think if we're having somebody that's championing a particular project, it's not necessarily a committee. Anyway, wouldn't want to run afoul of the rules.
Right. Thank you for mentioning that. So yeah, how about we leave it until the next meeting and we'll figure out the technicalities behind that. And if it's just one person leading it, that'll be the point of contact, and we'll go forward from there. Thank you. All right. The next item on the agenda is the greenhouse gas emissions overview. So we did go over the emissions targets from the last meeting. There was just a follow-up item as far as going into the detail of information. I believe John Jordan asked for the information as far as historic purposes of where our emitters are since 2012. So I did compile the data that I'll can quickly show everybody. Just give me a moment here to pull it up. Of what are our emitters over time since the beginning of our data set here. Okay, so everybody should be able to see that. Right, excellent. So this is our essentially our greenhouse gas data as a whole since 2012 all the way up to 2021. So the brown line on the top, again, our largest emitter, as we know, is the Rosemont Rec Complex. So starting in 2012, we're a little over between, let's call it 1,700 tons. And now we're just under over 1,100 tons in 2021. So you can see that decline over time. As for the other facilities, they retain relatively flat. So that includes our street lights, our public works department, parks and facilities, New Hamburg Arena, lift stations, community centers, our administration building. So that's the data we had. Are there any questions on that information? I know there's probably a lot to take in right now as far as looking at it on a chart. Councilor Fanning?
Well, like you said, there's a lot to take in. The thing for me when I see something sort of flat, it's like, okay, what can we do? And obviously, so those things aren't changing. How do we get them to change? How do we move the needle on those? The Wilmot Rec Complex is coming down, which is good, although it's going to increase when we increase the size of it. But that's a reality, right? So how do we keep it from increasing too much? Yeah, it just starts all sorts of questions in my head. We've done some retrofits and such on all of the buildings, and that then has not made a significant impact. Would that be a fair assessment of this data?
Oh, am I muted? No, I'm not. Sorry. It's tough to say at this point in time. As far as I'm just trying to think of the scale as far as it goes. But yes, I would say, as far as some of the retrofits we have done, may not had a material impact. I would say definitely as far as the overall impact, because some of the facilities, as we know, like if we look at the administration building, it's very, very small on the scale compared to the WRC. So it might have had a little impact on relative to that size of facility, but I think when we go back always to the WRC, the biggest impacts have to come from there. So because even if we did 100% reduction, let's say at the admin building, it's not going to put a dent at all up, right? So, Tova?
So this is so totally my wheelhouse, and I'm so excited to see this. Thank you, Ashton. I would agree 100% that the WRC needs to be the focus, because look at how high up that is. Like the administrative building is such a small amount, and yeah, the needle's not moving that quickly, but a move in that needle is such a teeny tiny little number down here at the bottom. So that complex is a big thing. And I know that there's some stuff through FCM for community spaces, for deep energy retrofits of community spaces. So I'd be happy to sort of connect offline to see if we can get you some more information on what FCM is opening and offering there. There may be a capacity limit, like it might need to be X number of square feet, or it needs to be projects of X size, but I know that they allow for aggregation. So it could be that we talk to one in Wilmot and one in Woolwich, for example, and the two of them go in together to get that funding. So that's a possibility to do that. I don't have the deep details on that program at this point. The other question I would have, of course, I look at then the next highest number, streetlights I see, but then public works and engineering. And can you give me any kind of indication of what is in public works and engineering? Is that fleet? I assume
That'll be predominantly our fleet, like the dump trucks.
Yeah. And so when you think about where GHG emissions come from, it's primarily in Ontario, natural gas, gasoline, fuel oil. And so it's space heating in the recreation complex and your fleet vehicles. So for executing public works and engineering. And so there's going to be some questions about how do we look at if there are lower emission vehicle options, and there are not a lot, but there are some, and that technology is coming along, but also efficiency of use of spaces, of time, of building, of the vehicles and how they move around the community and that kind of stuff. We have actually at SWR seen some real progress for other members who actually change workflow for the day for drivers, and it brings down their emissions significantly. So they're not driving from here to here and then over here and over here. Like you actually are optimizing for flow of traffic. It seems so silly, but it made such a big difference. Happy to connect on those offline if those are of interest.
Thanks, Tova. Councillor Fanning?
Just a couple thoughts when Tova was speaking, that Wellesley is just breaking ground on a new rec center. So maybe this is an opportune time to have a conversation with them about a joint project. Although it's probably, better get on that ASAP, because, if they're breaking ground, they've got pretty much everything planned already, I'm sure. And I don't know if anybody has seen, but I just saw the headline. I haven't had a chance to read further that there was a vote against, why can't I think the term?
Geothermal.
Geothermal, thank you. I don't know why that word was not coming to me. And does anybody know about the context of that or why they've decided against it?
I don't. I did see the headline that you're talking about as well, but I hadn't had a moment to read into it as well. I'm not sure if anyone else on the committee knows. No. Okay. All right. As far as a joint initiative, I can see if we can reach out to them to see if there's anything that we can do. But given that headline, but again, without reading into it, we'll just have to ask the question to see if there's any opportunity there.
And just as a note, I think that funding opportunity is for deep energy retrofits. So I don't know that the Wellesley building would be eligible, but it might be that one of the other communities might be able to, or to, and or it also doesn't have to be recreation centers. It could be like, we want to do deep energy retrofits on every building that Wilmot owns. That might be a much bigger undertaking to do the engineering and the scoping of those projects. But just, it's not something it's community spaces. So that means either owned by the municipality, or it could be a church or some space that the community uses to gather. That's how they're defining community spaces.
Thanks, Silva. Councillor Fenning?
We just got funding for the renovation, some funding for the renovation of the New Hamburg, the old former arena. And that would definitely be a retrofit project. So maybe we could apply for something that would, increase our capacity to do things with that building that would make it even a better, more sustainable project.
Excellent. I can certainly take that as a takeaway. We're always actively seeking, those funding opportunities. So if there's anything we can certainly to supplement the project, that would be great. So I'll make that note and take that away. And as far as the retrofit with Wellesley, I'll just leave it on the side for now, just given it's for retrofits and these are new facilities we're talking about. But perhaps there's maybe a broader conversation of, like what Tova said, other townships as far as community center retrofits or any other type of municipal asset we own. Okay. If there's nothing else on that, we'll move on. So it brings us to our last agenda item, which is the Smart Commute program input. So I was reached out by our Director of Parks, Facilities, and Recreation regarding the Smart Commute program. So just for a little bit of background, in I believe 2019, there was a motion passed, and I'll read it out here, that Wilmot Township, by our council, that Wilmot Township shall create a Smart Commute program, whereas we will take a phased approach at creating a designated carpooling parking spots with the appropriate signage located at our municipal properties and locations recommended by staff report, starting with the Wilmot Rec Complex and starting in 2020. So as you're aware, as 2020 came around, COVID started. So, throughout that year, 2020 and 2021, there were other priorities in place. So the project wasn't able to be implemented. So now the Director of Parks, Facilities, and Recreation has reached out to myself to liaise with you on the committee. I guess her to receive feedback on imposing such a program that she intends to bring forward to council, I believe, in the near term. So she's looking at including various spots, and the criteria that she's noted is to be relatively close to the Highway 7-8 corridor, preferably within 5 to 10 minutes, be winter maintained, and be on township owned property, obviously, so that we can control the winter maintenance along that. So she has proposed a number of sites. So the sites are at the following: 4 spaces at the WRC, which was the initial pilot area, but she's gone above and beyond that. So she's also considering 2 spaces at the Kirkpatrick Park in the lower parking lot, 2 spaces at the event complex in 2023 once the parking lot expansion is complete, and 2 spaces at the New Dundee Community Center. So the timelines for those carpooling spots would be Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Specifically designated. So she just wanted to see and receive your feedback if there's anything, any issues with the proposed spots and program itself. Councillor Fenning.
Struggling with that today. I don't know. It sounds great. Obviously, I was one of the people that voted in favor of establishing this, and I'm wondering about adding Mannheim, the Mannheim Community Center, or like park there. because it is also very close to the highway, has a good corridor, straight to it, and its proximity to Tressler Road makes it, I think, a good spot as well.
Okay. I will certainly pass that information back to her. Due to proximity. Tova?
I almost did it. I almost started the meet on. My only comment or recommendation would be that those carpool spots should be prime spots, not back at the back. They should be right up front and somewhere that you really want to park, because that will make it a carrot that people are more tempted to use if they are just a standard spot. Yeah. So just a note, I don't know who determines what spot they get, where they go, but in our experience, if they are, you've got the handicap parking, you've got maybe parking for parents with young children, and then carpool, so that they're all right there in prime spots. That makes it all the more effective. If it's just another parking spot anywhere in the lot, doesn't matter. So just 2 cents.
Thanks, Tova. I'll make that note and pass that along as well. Howie?
Yeah, on that line, I was going to suggest, wouldn't it make most sense to have them in the spot closest to the highway access, which may not be prime for the facility? Rather than making them drive all the way to the front door of the facility for a prime spot, it probably makes more sense if the goal is to minimize how much they're driving, especially at a place like WRC, to have them as close to the entrance to WRC as possible rather than being prime. But just my thought, not trying to argue, I just throwing that in there, that the goal
whatever
is
is high value.
Right.
Yeah, if closer to get out is of higher value to the people who use that space, great. If right by the door is of higher value to people who use that location, great. Happy for whatever is considered high value. The other thing we have seen people do, and this doesn't necessarily go over well, but the smaller parking spots are higher value, and the larger parking spots for the bigger, more gas intense vehicles are less high value. They're back at the back. You have to walk further. They're less appealing, to encourage people to, when they can, choose a smaller vehicle. Just another idea we've seen, and it has worked.
Thanks. So I'll pass on the words high value. So either or, whichever is determined to be most beneficial for that specific site. Okay, good information. So are there any other comments on that program? Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, so that leads us on the listed items on the agenda. So there's no correspondence. So roundtable information sharing. So I'll start off with one, and it was an article that Harold sent to me with respect to lawn maintenance, and it was a very interesting article as far as information on to certain communities where they promoted letting your grass grow a little bit longer than normal to kind of promote the benefits that come part with that. I don't know, Harold, if you want to share a little bit more on that.
Sure. It seems like it's been in the news a little bit lately, but No Mow May. I didn't run it by our bylaw officer. I think she'd be fine with it. Erin's pretty good on stuff like that. But the thought being that bees and such, which are under stress all the time, dandelions are a good early source of food and sustenance for the bees as they emerge, and that if we don't mow our lawns in May, it may be beneficial in a whole lot of ways, notwithstanding just the savings on lawnmowers not running if they're gas lawnmowers. So it seems like it's got wheels in a lot of communities. It sounds like maybe in England is where it sort of started, but I thought that might be something. I know we're 12 days into May, but maybe for next year that could be something that we look at as something we champion, with education in advance, obviously. And so it was just an idea that might be something of interest that we put on our calendar for next year.
Tova?
Love no mow May. I think it's fantastic. Greenhouse gas impacts, as you said, too. And so that's great. The other one is to encourage people not, and the township to not clean up gardens in the fall, because those stalks are where things, and the leaves are where things overwinter. And so the pollinators are in those stalks of those plants. And if you clean them away, they have nowhere to overwinter, and it causes stress on those species. So we should not be cleaning up our gardens in the fall. It's actually very bad. So that would be a cool thing to add, sort of like a seasonal. In the fall, you should leave it be. That's how Mother Nature intended it. In the spring, no mow May, let those dandelions, which are not weeds, they are a natural food for our pollinator species. So love that. And if you put the two together, you then have a dual message that runs all year round.
Excellent. So yeah, I think maybe as far as when we think about for our planning for next year, along with the Earth Day and things like that, I think the No Mow Day May, if the committee is agrees with it, and I think it's a fantastic idea. That's something we can kind of educate as part of our process, and then expand, the level of engagement we're doing as a township for our community. Okay. Any further questions or comments on that particular item? All right, thanks again, Harold, for sharing that. That's a great one. Okay, anybody else want to share anything before we close out the meeting? Councillor Fenning.
Well, I want to share that I've put in an order for an electric vehicle. For any of you who've ever been to my house, it's a little bit of a challenge to have an electric vehicle, because many of them are very low profile, close to the ground. This is a farm that doesn't work so well. Subaru came out with an electric sort of all-terrain SUV, and it's called the Solterra. And it has the same ground clearance as my Forester. So it's also all-wheel drive, which is really important when you have a 500-meter driveway that drifts, and all of the other conditions that go with living on a farm, which I absolutely love. But yeah, it's I haven't been able to until now. The bad news on that is I don't know if I'll actually get one this year, because they're in such high demand that, we probably we're not top of the priority list for the manufacturer. So, but I'm really excited. And if you look it up, you could the reviews of it are kind of fun to watch.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, and then supply is definitely an issue. Hopefully it comes this year. Leslie, you had your hand up for a second there.
I was trying to do like the clappy things, but it's gone. But I have also done that. I didn't know that was a thing I can share, but I've also done the same on a RAV4 hybrid. So pretty exciting. I think it's going to be 8 months. So January is when I'm going to get it. Yeah.
Just as a note, this is something that the manufacturers, and I don't think industry expected, that the demand for electric vehicles is incredibly high. The high gas prices are driving it even faster. I went into Volkswagen and asked them about their ID4, and they're saying it's going to be 18 months till you can get one, and you can't even pre-order right now. The demand is so high. And so as a municipality, to be thinking about the amping up of parking spots or for electric vehicle infrastructure allowance in buildings owned by the municipality, in buildings not owned by the municipality, in parkings. I know we've talked about this before, parking lots being required to have conduit under the ground to be able to put in electric vehicle charging in the future, because a large part of the time and expense in putting in a EV charging station is actually trenching up the driveway or the sidewalks. This is coming fast, and the demand is only growing. And if the gas prices stay anywhere close to where they are, it's made it even harder to get them. I'm on a couple of lists waiting to get something, but like I've basically heard, good luck. 6-8 months is fast right now for an electric vehicle. So just something to keep on sort of the council and the staff mindset, that this is going to come faster now than I think we expected. And the manufacturers are gobsmacked, is the British term that I really like to use in situations like this.
Silva, Councillor Fenning.
Yeah, I think, think back to a couple of years ago when we were talking about the Kirkpatrick Park work and the, not Kirkpatrick Park, but also up on Wilmot Street, and talking about retrofitting or, making it available that going forward we would be able to add. And I'm really proud of us for thinking of that at the time. And I think, well, Brian, you're probably, thinking about all the projects you have coming down the pipe, and that's something we're going to be asking for, right?
Okay, so if there's nothing else on as far as a roundtable, I'll have ask for a motion to adjourn. Okay, that's moved by Leslie. All right, so that concludes the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.